Everyone. Today's webinar is on the Appendix FM salary changes that were announced last week. So my name is Uche. I'm the Regional Manager and Head of the Corporate Department at Immigration Advice Service. With over 20 years of experience in all aspects of immigration law at all stages in terms of advice, representation, advocacy, and training. I'll be the one giving the webinar today. So just a few points at the beginning. We will try and send everybody out the slides after today, but please feel free to take notes as you're going along in regards to what we go through. Please feel free to ask questions at the end. It'll be really helpful if you can use the chat box in the with the teams, and that will allow us to have try and answer your questions as much as possible. So we'll try and leave 30 minutes or so, 30 to 20 minutes at the end to answer your questions. So as we're going along, please put your questions in the chat box. Obviously, keep an open mind and hopefully you'll enjoy the webinar. We will be going through the changes that were announced last week. We'll go through the impact of these changes, what happens in regards to extension applications, what we know so far in regards to that, some of the questions we may not have answers to based upon the full detail of the announcement has not been done or has not been incorporated into the rules yet. So some of the answers we don't have, but we'll try our best. And we'll look at, if you don't meet the financial requirements that are being announced, what other options do you have to still bring your partners and spouses to the UK. We will be finishing a hard 7 today. So again, we'll try our best to answer as many questions as possible. Okay, so the changes that were announced last week, what are they? So some of you may know this, some of you may not. I'm sure most of you do. So the income threshold in regards to those that are wanting to bring their spouses and partners to the UK, it was announced that that figure would be increased considerably. So at the current time, the income threshold is 18,600, and that will be increased to 38,700. An exact date of when that increase will take place is not yet clear. We have been informed, just like everybody else, that it will be spring of next year. I normally count spring as March, April, May, so it's likely to be one of those 3 months. Hopefully, it will be towards the latter end of spring, or hopefully there'll be a challenge to it in the alternative. So why have they raised this minimum threshold to the amount that it has? So the initial information that came through and what was said on the day of the announcement is they wanted to bring it in line with the same threshold that the skilled workers would now have. Again, that's been increased or will be increased in spring next year to 38,700. The Home Office blurb is to ensure people only bring dependents that they can support financially. They have made a decision to raise the minimum income for family visas. The question is asked of why this increase is so much. As you're sure you've worked out already, 18,600 is more than a double jump for it to be now in spring 38,700. So what they have said is family life must not be established here at the taxpayer's expense, and family migrants must be able to integrate if they are to play a full part in British life. The minimum income requirement has not been increased for over a decade and no longer reflects the level of income required by a family to ensure they are self-sufficient and do not rely on public funds. Well, the change that happened was in 2012. That's when the 18,600 threshold was actually incorporated into the immigration rules. So it has been a decade. However, that figure was picked out based upon it was the figure you'd normally have before you are claiming benefits. So there was some reasoning behind that. The jump to 38,700 seems to be quite arbitrary. And the fact that they've referred to the fact that people shouldn't be reliant on public funds doesn't really make sense, because those that come in under the spousal visa route, especially those that go on to the 5-year route to settlement, will not have any access to public funds. And therefore they manage has a couple or has a family based upon the income that they receive. So their reasoning behind public funds, I don't think will hold up. If there is a challenge regarding that, hopefully that will be one of the focal points. So what does this mean in terms of the immigration rules? So as you can see, like I said, at the current time, the gross annual income has to be 18,600 or more, and that's if it's only a couple. So if you have a spouse or partner, a civil partner that you're wanting to bring into the UK or allow to stay in the UK, an income of 18,600 is currently required. That will now be jumped to 38,700 in spring next year. At the current time, if you have children that don't come under any of the exemptions, then there's an additional amount on top of that 18,600. At the current time, for the first child, it's 3,800. And for any additional child is 2,400 for each one after the first. So the 18,006 is just the base amount if it's a couple with no children. At the current time, it's not clear whether this will change. Again, hopefully it doesn't, but we have to wait for the detail. As most of you will know, in terms of a child is defined as those that are under the age of 18, and those that have limited leave to remain in the UK or applying to come in with the spouse. It could be a stepchild that was coming in with the partner from overseas. It doesn't include British child or a child that has ILR status in the UK or a child that has status under Appendix EU. Those are discounted, so you wouldn't have to increase the amount if you had a child in the family that come under one of those immigration status. So one of the things that we do have in place at the moment is that you can meet this income threshold by different ways. You can meet it via income, but there's other ways that you can meet it as well. So one of the questions that was addressed by or asked was, can you meet this minimum income threshold by various ways? So the initial statement is yes, you can. The ability to meet the threshold via savings, for example, is still a possibility, and allow you to combine different incomes that you can meet the income threshold of the 38,700 from spring onwards. So what are those different sources, just to have a reminder of that and how this increase impacts on that? So you have category A to G in terms of how you can meet that income threshold. So in terms of employment income, whether it's salaried or non-salaried, that's what we've touched upon already. You're looking at the 38,700. So whether you are a salary-based job or whether you get a variable wage job, you're going to have to be able to earn, that's going to be your salary over a year. You can also meet it via savings, which we're going to touch on a bit more in the next couple of slides. But you can also meet it by having a pension, private pension or state pension. And you can also beat it by being self-employed, either as a director or as a sole trader, which we'll touch on again in a bit more detail as well. So savings, obviously them increasing the savings amount means that, sorry, them increasing the income threshold amount means it has a huge impact on what the savings figure will be. At the current time, if you have no other income, so you don't have any employment income that you're relying upon, then the figure of savings that you would need to have in your account for 6 months or more before you apply is £62,500. Okay, which is a huge amount anyway. Not a lot of people have that, but that's what the figure would be at the current time. And that's based upon the 18,600 times 2.5, because that's the amount of time that you get, 2.5 years. So the amount is supposed to cover you for the 2.5 years that you're here, plus the base amount of 16,000, because that base amount is on the basis that anything below that you could still be eligible for benefits. If you have any savings that are above 16,000, you would not be eligible for benefits. So that's the calculation. Again, the basis of the current rules are based upon the fact that it's just above those are not claiming benefits in the UK. So there is rationale behind it. Unfortunately, that cannot be said with what the figure is now. So if we look at what the figure would be for savings under the new salary threshold from spring next year, it would mean that £62,500 turns into 112,750 that would have to be achieved. So you'd have the 38,700 times the 2.5 plus the 16,000. So if you had no other income, no employment income, pension or rental income, for example, then you would have to have £112,750 in your account for 6 months continuously, prior to making an application to sponsor a partner or spouse, which is a huge increase. And again, this is just based upon a couple. If you have children, and I've just given an example here, let's say you have 2 children, based upon the current figures of those not increasing, your base amount would be 44,900, because you would increase it based upon the first child and the second child. Again, you would times that by 2.5 plus the 16,000. So that would then turn into 128,250. Okay, so a huge difference again, whether you have children or you don't have children. If you're going to meet the financial aspect from a savings perspective, it's a lot more that you would have to have in your account, and have it for a 6-month period continuously. What impact does that have on if you're going to meet it by self-employment, for example? So under category F or category G, you can be a sole trader or a director of a limited company and be able to meet the salary threshold. So if you go under category F, that's based upon your last financial year as a self-employed person. So you would have to have the 38,700 as the amount as a sole trader or as a director of a limited company. If you go under category G, that's based upon an average of 2 financial years. So you may have earned less in 1 year, but you earn a lot more in the second year or vice versa. In that scenario, over the 2 years, it jumps to 77,400 that you would have had to achieve. So you could have achieved, let's say, 27,400 in year 1, but in year 2, you managed to do a 50,000 income on your self-employment. That would allow you to meet the category under the self-employment. And just to touch on that just a tiny bit more as well, is with self-employment, it's based upon your income after expenses. So if you're a sole trader, for example, and you're doing your self-assessment in April each year, then the taxable figure, so it's not the figure before expenses, it's the figure after you've taken your expenses out and what you're going to be paying tax upon. And that would be the 38,700. So again, a huge increase, especially sole traders having to earn that amount after expenses. And the same if you're a director of a company that you own yourself, or it's a family-owned business, comes under that criteria, then it's not the revenue of the business that you're looking at. It's your personal income has via dividends or salary or both. Again, having to meet that 38,700 threshold. So really a big jump in regards to that and what you actually receive as an individual rather than what the company is receiving. And making sure that, again, with self-employment, it's always the most recent tax year. So for sole traders, it's April to April. And for companies that are limited companies on Companies House, is based upon the incorporation date every year. The most recent one, so not the one that you are obliged to file with HMRC, but if the year is passed, then that's the one that you're having to support your spouse's application with. And then pension, the same. Obviously, if you're going to meet it just by pension, you have to have a very good pension to meet it. Otherwise, you'll have to combine that with other sources of income as well. Again, 38,700. Pension that does include private pension and state pension. So if you have numerous ones, just like if you had more than one job, you can combine that income together. The same for pension, but meeting it with one pension may not be possible anymore. So those are the categories in terms of meeting which it is currently now 18,600 and what it's going to be 38,700 from spring next year. The other way that you can meet the how do I say, the financial requirement for Appendix F FM at the moment is adequate maintenance. So adequate maintenance is available for those whose partner is receiving one of these benefits. So if they're receiving disability, PIP, for example, severe disability allowance, sorry, then you are exempt from the 18,600 as it is now. So whether they will still have that, I would be very shocked, even though I'm shocked already by the amount, to be honest, but even more shocked if they took disability to be exempt away if your partner is receiving one of these benefits. In this scenario, rather than having to meet the 18,600 amount, you would only have to meet what the definition is of adequate maintenance. And how is adequate maintenance calculated at the current time? Adequate maintenance is calculated on what your net income is that you receive, minus your housing costs, and what is left over. So let's say you have a part-time job, for example, and you receive £500 in a month, and your housing costs are £150, and therefore you have 350 left. What they look at is what you're remaining, is that to the level of somebody that would have receiving benefits. So just to give you an example of that, at the current time for somebody on benefits, so you can see here a couple, if you're both over the age of 18, which you have to be for Appendix FM, at the current time, the minimum would be £133.30. If you have any dependent children, then it'll be £77.78 per child. You would have a family premium on top, and if there's any disabilities, those would be included as well. And this is what is expected for you to receive on a weekly basis. Okay, so just a quick example of this. If you had a situation where Mr. X had a wife and 2 children that he's wanting to sponsor, and he's receiving an income of £460 each week. That's based upon a part-time employment, based upon working tax credit, child benefit and child tax credit, as well as housing benefit. When that's calculated on a weekly basis, he gets £460 and 17 pence. Okay. Now, you then have to deduct the housing costs, which includes any rent or mortgage or any council tax. No other bills are included. So it's either rent, mortgage, or council tax. So in this scenario, he pays £150 rent and no council tax. So you would deduct £150 from that figure, and that would leave him each week with £310 and 17 pence. Now, based upon the allowances of somebody on benefits, a couple allowance of £133.30. There's 2 dependent children, so the £77.80 times 2, plus the family premium. That means in this scenario, Mr. X would have to receive at least £307 and 43 pence per week. In this example, they just do by a couple of pounds. Okay, but that's the calculation for adequate maintenance. Again, at the current time, it is unclear whether that will still remain. It's hoped that it will, that people that are receiving disability or PIP or any of the ones listed will be exempt from that 38,700 figure and be able to meet the adequate maintenance test instead. One of the big questions that has come up is what will happen to people who are renewing their visas. So those that are coming into the UK in the future will know the amount that they have to achieve. But what about the people that are already here that have come in under the 18,600 threshold? So what has been initially said by the government is that the new policies won't be applied retrospectively. So somebody that's on a spousal visa now would not have to start earning £38,700 immediately. And until the immigration rules are amended, the minimum threshold that we have now will apply. However, for those that are submitting their extension application, the information is more vague. So what they said is we are establishing the specifics of the policy, including how it will apply to those renewing their visas, and will confirm more details in due course. So again, normally what happens, and again, I say normally, that's not always the case. Those that have entered the UK under a Pacific route will be able to continue under that route, under those same rules, until they're eligible for their settlement. But based upon this statement and some murmurings that have coming out of the government, it's not a guarantee that that will be the case. So there could be possibilities that are those that are doing their extension applications, rather than having that 18,600 threshold to meet, they may have the 38,700 to meet, which I know is going to be a huge problem for a lot to achieve that. Even if they get a second job, getting that figure is not easy. Obviously, the question was asked to them, you're basically splitting up families, British nationals and or settled nationals that are here with their families, or those that are overseas and they're wanting to bring over. What happens to those that just can't meet that threshold? It's just not feasible. Their answer was the family immigration rules contain provisions for exceptional circumstances where there'll be unjustifiably harsh consequences for the applicant, their partner, a relevant child, or another family member if their application were to be refused. So what does this actually mean? What it means is that at the current time, there is effectively 2 routes under the Appendix FM. Those that are able to be eligible for their indefinite stay after 5 years, which we call the 5-year route, and those that are eligible for their indefinite stay, their settlement, after 10 years. So those that fall down, so they don't meet the financial requirement or another requirement, are then pushed to the 10-year. So they will have to have residency in the UK for 10 years before they're eligible for their ILR status. The problem with this is that it's not just straightforward, is that, oh, you don't meet this and therefore you are pushed to the 10-year route, which obviously is a longer period of time, a lot more costs. You'll be paying for 4 applications rather than 2. But in addition to that, you actually have to meet the criteria of the 10-year route. The criteria being that if you don't meet the minimum threshold, which it is now 18,600, but which it will be 38,700 in spring, it's a 2-stage test. You have to show, firstly, which is the most crucial part, that there would be those unjustifiably harsh consequences to the applicant, to their partner, or a relevant child. And the threshold of such exceptional circumstances which must be met before other credible, reliable sources of income can be looked upon is a high one. So the rules actually say it's a high test. It's just not a situation where everybody will fit that criteria. So you have to put forward a case of a breach of human rights that will occur if your application is refused. And that's available at the current time for those that are coming into the UK and those that are applying for their extension applications as well. It's only when you meet that exceptional threshold test that they will then look at, oh, can you meet the financial requirement by other sources of income? And that could be relying upon third-party support, which is not allowed under the 5-year route, but is allowed under the 10-year route. They could look at credible earnings from the applicant overseas as well as the sponsor in the UK. And they could look at other credible or reliable sources of income to make up that 38,700. So it's not straightforward. And for the Home Office to say that, oh, there is this other unduly harsh consequences application that they can make is not genuine. It's not, it doesn't put across the seriousness of making that application. So under 3.1 of the immigration rules, but also under 3.2, Gen 3.2, there's also criteria that if you don't meet any of the rules, so if there are situations where you don't meet the financial requirements at all, so the 38,700 you can't meet by third-party support or by somebody helping you out of a job, you can't meet it at all, then you have 3.2 has an option to say that I can't meet that figure. But again, there are those unjustifiably harsh consequences, and that there will be a breach of Article 8. Again, this is available for in-country and out-country applications. The last part of the rules under the 10-year route is for those that are inside of the UK, which is under EX1 of Appendix FM. And in that situation, those that have a genuine and subsisting relationship with a child who's under the age of 18, the child is in the UK and is either British or has lived here for 7 years or more. And so you have to meet that, and also taking into account their best interests as a primary consideration, it would not be reasonable to expect that child to leave the UK. So again, it's not straightforward. You have to put an argument, evidence forward of this genuine subsisting relationship with a child in the UK, of why it would not be reasonable for that parent to leave the country. And again, in this scenario, it's if you have a British child or a child that has remained here for 7 years or more. So again, everybody's not going to fall into that category. And the second part of EX1 is if you have a genuine and existing relationship with a partner who's in the UK and is British or settled or has refugee or humanitarian protection, but you then have to meet, are there insurmountable obstacles to family life in the UK? Family life with that partner continuing outside of the UK. And again, the rules say that this is a very high test that has to be met. So it's not everybody that's going to fall into that criteria. Those that are in a relationship with no children that meet that definition are going to be finding it hard to meet the 10-year route criteria, unless the Home Office decide to change that based upon this new threshold. So hopefully that helps. That gives you some guidance in regards to the changes that have been announced last week. We have the 5-year route available for those that can meet the current threshold of 18,600. Those that can make their extension applications before the changes, those that can make their ILR applications before the changes, you will be kept with the current salary threshold. If it is post-spring and the new changes come in, we'll have to wait and see whether any extensions post-spring will have those new salary thresholds or not. Again, I think the Home Office would have a huge case against them if they applied it to those that were already here, because it will impact everyone. And those that don't meet the criteria, especially for those that are coming newly onto this route after spring 2024, having the option of the 10-year route, but just keeping in mind that it is a high test to meet, whether you're in country or out country, to show those unduly harsh consequences or the fact that there is a breach of human rights that has happened. Okay, so I said we would leave some time for questions. So I think there is quite a few questions in the chat. So I've got 2 colleagues that are going to help to answer questions in the chat. I'm not too sure if we can unmute you or not in terms of, let's have a look. There's a few hands up that I can see. Bear with me. Irfan and Lydie, are you able to start answering questions in the chat? And I'll try and go through the questions that have hands up. Please, because we have limited time that we are finishing at 7, please keep your question to 1. So Angelo? Are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Thank you. No, I asked before if Rifa, my partner, can join, but it's okay. Now it's late. I guess it's recorded the meeting. Anyway, I share all the information. Just a simple question for you. I'm living in London under Europe settlement, okay, for almost 5 years. I will get indefinite remain July next year. And my partner used to live in UK for 1 year and a half under skilled work visa. Now she's back in India. Okay. We want to try with fiance spouse visa. If apply within December this year with your company, because I get as well some offer. I spoke with your team as well. If I attend many training with you, do you think we still look at the figure with the new rule, or we are with old regulation scheme?
Well, if you're applying in December, then you would be under the current rules, the 18,600. When you're doing your switch from fiance to spousal visa, if you're able to do that, sorry, go on. If you're able to do that before spring, then Yes, you'll be under the current threshold. After spring, like I said, there isn't a guarantee at the current
Yeah.
time of whether they will change it.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, the threshold, just for me and also for the guys that are listening here, the threshold is gonna be 38,000 something, and this is gonna be the income. But then I have seen if my partner doesn't have job at the moment, I have to multiply this income for 2.5, or is just the saving what you're talking before?
No, that's just the savings. That's just the
Okay, okay.
savings.
So
Okay.
basically, if I have myself for now just 38 or more, it's gonna be okay, right?
That would be correct. Thank you
Okay.
very much, Angela. I just want to
Thank you.
make sure everybody has a chance. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, exactly. Go ahead for the other question. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Mariella?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, my wife, she couldn't join. She has to work at the moment. That's why I joined her.
Yeah, did you have a question?
At the moment, we want to apply for the partner with spouse visa before that requirements change.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm living in the Turkey. My wife, she's a English, and she makes at the moment 1,130 pounds, but she has a son, 10 years old. That's why she cannot move here.
Mm-hmm.
We read something on the Google, and we can meet the requirements with the third party sponsor or something like that. Is there any way to apply the spouse visa for us?
Yeah, so like I said, at the current time, it's the 18,600 threshold. If you don't meet that at the moment, then you have the ability to try under the 10-year route. But as I explained, you would have to show that there's unduly harsh consequences or a breach of your Article 8 rights if the application is refused. So if your partner is able to meet that 18,600 before the changes, that would be the better application to make.
Yeah, I understand. So, if she wants to, she's trying to work a lot, extra hours, can we show with that contract or something, she gonna make this money next 6 months or something?
Yeah, so you'd provide pay slips and bank statements and a letter from the employer to confirm that. Okay, thank you very much, Maria. Abhinav, you had a question?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I missed the first 20 minutes of it, so I'm not sure if this was
Okay.
already covered. But basically, I'll be applying for ILR, and my partner will be applying for dependent, like renewing her dependent visa in May of 24. So will the salary threshold be applicable for her renewal as well
Did
as
you say
my?
in May, did you say?
Yes, in May.
It's possible. Like I said, they said spring next
Yeah,
year, which is March, April, May. So
sure.
you can apply 28 days before the visa is to expire, or 28 days before the person's accumulated their 2.5 years in the UK. So
Right.
it may be a possibility to do that.
Okay, and if my salary is above the threshold, is that okay for the dependent visa as well?
Are you in the UK at the current
Yes.
time?
Yes.
And yes, if you're in the UK lawfully, then your salary can be accumulated with your partners.
So my partner will have to apply with her own salary, even for the dependent visa.
No, I'm saying that
Okay. Yeah, right. Okay.
if you're in the UK lawfully and she's applying to sponsor you, then both of your salaries can be combined to meet the threshold.
I see. Okay. Got it. All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Armanav? Did you have a question?
Okay, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, Mike, I would like to ask a question about that savings route. If I take the savings route, I saw that £112,750 to be held in the savings account for 6 months continuously. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and it could be like both me and my spouse and the US. So it will be in the US equivalent US dollars. Will that be okay?
That's fine. As long as the currency conversion amounts to that figure in British pounds, it can be held overseas in a different currency.
Okay, and for 6 months continuously, the number is £112,750, right?
Exactly. You can't go below that figure for the 6
Okay.
months.
Okay, is it
Okay.
possible to have a copy of the presentation by email?
Yeah, like I said, we are trying to send those out. Obviously, there's a lot of
Okay,
people on the
great.
call, so we will
Okay,
try.
thank you. Yeah, that was
Thank
my
you.
question. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, you had a question?
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hi, yeah. Yeah, so my question is, I'm a UK citizen and my husband is here on a spousal visa. We're due to apply for his indefinite leave to remain in July, August time of 2024. And I was just wondering if you know if the income of the 36,700 will be applicable to us, and if so, will it be on a combined salary or will it be solely on his?
So you're doing the extension application. So your partner's lawfully in, both of you are in the UK. So your combined income can be counted towards the threshold. So that is something I can definitely say. In terms of what the figure will be, unfortunately, like I said, the guidance at the moment is the Home Office are considering what policy will apply for those that are extending after spring 2024. Like I said before, it's most of the time what happens, any new rules that come in will only apply to those that are coming onto the route rather than those that are already on it. So I can't guarantee you. We'll have to wait for further information regarding that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Sophie, you had a question? Sophie, do you have a question? One more try, Sophie? No? Okay.
Hello.
Yep, I can hear you.
Fab. I think they've mainly been covered really what I wanted to ask, but
Okay.
like Laura just said, my husband is due to do indefinite leave to remain. He's just extended his 5-year route. We're just waiting for the decision on that. But with the indefinite leave to remain, will that again be a combined salary? Or would that depend on just me as the sponsor?
Yeah, because you're both here, it would be a combined salary. So if the changes do continue in 2.5 years when you're doing the ILR application, it will be both of your salaries.
Right, okay. And it doesn't affect the current extension because we haven't had the decision yet and hopefully we should have it soon. But if it does tip over into spring, that wouldn't affect us because
you submitted it before. So no, it wouldn't impact.
November, yeah. Right, okay, that's it then. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent. Brent, did you have a question?
Hello,
Hello? Yeah,
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Right. My partner is a British citizen, obviously. And I am the one that's obviously applied, and I've been given leave to remain. My 2.5 years is running out in March. My first bit of 2.5 years.
Mhm.
Okay, so obviously I've got to reapply. So I take it that both my income and her income will be included as in if it is up to 38,000. Is that right?
That's correct. Both of your incomes can be combined together to meet the threshold. But again, if your
So
extension
it
is
makes that
oh,
yeah, my extension is in 22nd of March 2024. So it may still be at the old level. Is that right?
yeah, that's what I was going to say,
Right.
that if it expires in March, then you can apply 28 days before the visa is due to expire.
Before,
So you could
my
apply
other
at the end
question,
of February.
right. My other question was, did they also increase the hospitalization fee, or
You mean the NHS surcharge fee?
that's right. Well, am I right in thinking they've increased that as well?
Yes, that's going up in January. So it's
Right.
£624 per year at the current time. That will go up to £1,035 per year from the 16th of January onwards.
So that's doubled, has it?
Just under doubled, yes.
So right. So I've got to apply for my extension, which is another 2.5 years.
Mhm.
So I will have to pay basically £2,500 for the NHS surcharge rather than sort of £1,500. Is that
156.
right?
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
So I have to pay the £2,500 plus the visa fee for the extension. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
That's quite a big increase, isn't it? To be fair, but
It is,
so
unfortunately.
that NHS surcharge is going up regardless of the 18,000 whatever, or that is definitely going up. Yeah.
That is definitely going up. Thank you very much, Brent.
Okay.
Patch Mama 67.
Hi.
Hi,
you.
sorry.
You hear the American accent. I am a dual US and Republic of Ireland citizen. I recently moved to the UK. I am trying to bring my husband, who is a US citizen, but he has a stamp 4 for Ireland. So so I had a question about the tax requirement. Well, the salary requirement, because you mentioned something about tax cycles. This is my first UK tax cycle because I haven't been here long.
Mhm.
Do I use, the accountant's going to give me that form any day now, but I think you might have said you use a previous full year, or do I use this year's form? And also, can I use a US pension for part of the requirements for salary?
So you're self-employed, is that correct?
Yes, yes, good guess, yes.
So do you know if you're a director of a limited company or are you a sole trader?
I'm a sole trader.
Okay.
Yep.
So your year is April to April in regards to sole trader. So currently, for example, we're in December 2023, and your most recent would be April 2022 to April 2023.
Oh, good, because that's the year I'm waiting for my form for. So
that
that's
would be-
wonderful.
That will be the
Okay.
one that you'll need to process.
And then
And in terms of your second question,
yes, thank you.
yes, you can include your US pension in that amount, as long as you've received it in that tax year that you've done your sole trader April to April.
Well, just one quick clarification, and then I'll let you go on to others. The U.S.
Mhm.
pension that my husband has a pension that he's receiving every month. I just have a very large pension that I can pull out from, but I don't actually receive every month, if that makes sense. But I have a very large savings.
Yeah, so that wouldn't go under pension because that would be a pension. It's like an income you're receiving on a
Gotcha.
regular basis. That could come under savings if you're able to access it immediately,
Yes.
even if you don't want to access it. So you could make it up. But the problem with savings and self-employment, you can't combine those incomes. So you can combine income with self-employment, but you can't combine savings with self-employment. So you'd have to pick one or the other.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. Mark Bostia. Mark, did you have a question? No? Okay, I'll move on. Maria? Maria Dolores?
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
hello. This is regarding, the extension for skilled workers. Is the 26,200, is there any clarity or if it's going to increase as the same amount as the 38,000?
So I didn't, what amount, sorry, did you say?
Do you know the income requirement, I mean the salary requirement for the skilled worker, which is the minimum is 26,200. Is that going to be increasing this coming springtime as well for extension? I mean,
Yeah, again, the guidance is exactly the same for the increase of skilled workers, that the Home Office will release their policy for extension applications nearer to the time. So again, there's a reasonable likelihood it won't apply for extensions, but we don't have a guarantee yet.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Sharia Mahmood, you may be the last question depending how quick we deal with it.